Good afternoon, everyone. We are the student leaders from 12 STEM 18, and we would like to welcome you to our Tambayan Session 4. Before we proceed with our discussion proper, I would like to share this video as our introduction about what will be the social issue or topic to be discussed.
Marriage Act says marriage means the union of a man and a woman to the exclusion of all others, voluntarily entered into for life. It's only said that since 2004. Before 2004, there wasn't a definition of what was meant by marriage in the Act. So, since 2004, the wording of the Marriage Act has specifically excluded same-sex couples from being able to marry or from having their overseas marriage recognised here. Same-sex couples and heterosexual couples get the same treatment if they're in a relationship defined as de facto. But what is that? The definition depends on the state you live in, whether you're applying for a visa or even accessing Centrelink payments. But broadly, you have to be living together in a romantic partnership. In day-to-day life, there might not be a huge difference between being de facto and being married, but in some situations there's a lot. Here are 3 couples, 2 heterosexual and 1 same-sex. They've just gone Facebook official. Let's move along a couple of years. Now this couple has decided to break up. They live together and they have a child, so they end up in the family court fighting over children and assets. Now here's one major difference between de facto relationships and marriage. A judge can decide, depending on the case, that you're not de facto, you're just cohabiting. In 2014, that happened to one couple who'd been living together for 13 years with a child. But if you're married, the judge's opinion on the nature of your relationship isn't relevant. Now let's look at 2 other couples. This couple is ready to commit, but being a same-sex couple, they can't do that in any legal way, so they have a party and call it a wedding. The other couple is also ready to commit, so they also have a party and call it a wedding. But they then sign a marriage certificate, a step the same-sex couple can't take, even if they want to. So now let's move on again. One member of each couple is in a car accident in Adelaide. The victims are taken to hospital, where unfortunately they both die from their injuries. For the married couple, the living spouse's name is recorded on the death certificate, which means they can easily access things like Centrelink bereavement payments and their late spouse's superannuation, life insurance, and financial accounts. It's not so easy for the same-sex couple. To get the same benefits and access, the same-sex partner will have to prove the relationship, a process that may take months. Let's say the car accident happens in Perth instead. In WA, de facto partners can be listed on death certificates, but only if they provide information about the relationship in time for the death to be registered. If they miss this window, they need the next of kin support to have their name added later. So, in a worst case scenario, a person might outlive their loved one, spend months trying to close bank accounts, access government support, and be barred from contributing to funeral arrangements. All because they're in a same-sex relationship and weren't allowed to marry. Heterosexual couples in de facto relationships run the risk of ending up in the same situation. But here's the thing, if you're a heterosexual couple, you have a choice. If you're gay, you don't. If changes are made to the wording of the Commonwealth Marriage Act, these state-by-state discrepancies would be moot. Some might still choose to remain de facto and be subject to different rules in different states, but they'd have the choice, and that's the point advocates are arguing for. No, only if it wants to. Marriage in a church and marriage in a legal sense are 2 different things. No, we're debating whether to include same-sex couples in the legal definition of marriage, not whether to change what heterosexual couples are entitled to. That's not a question of law.
Same-sex union and other marital issues in the Philippines. According to Britannica, same-sex marriage is a practice of marriage between 2 men or between 2 women. As we formally start our discussion, I would like to introduce myself. I am Jasper Magalona, and as we wanted to voice out our opinions and suggestions and to give you knowledge as we already chose which side are we in, if we are in favor or not in favor about our topic, the legalization of same-sex union and other marital issues in the Philippines. Okay, I would like to introduce the discussants for this session. For the proposition, we have Mr. Luel Dan Jose, and for his discussants, we have Mr. Dylan Ferreira, Ms. Mabel Amigo, and Mr. Alvander Gemino. And for the opposition, We have yours truly, Mr. Jasper Magalona, Mr. Brandon Foro, and Mr. John Martin Garcinas. But before we finally proceed with our discussion, I would like to discuss the general instructions for our session. These are the following. We have the introduction part. Second, we will proceed to the discussion proper. Third, we will have the evaluation of current policies. Fourth one will be the synthesis and suggestions by the discussants. And five, we will proceed with the closing remarks. Now let's proceed with the discussion part. For the discussion part, we will have the proposition constructive, which will last about 6 to 7 minutes. The moderator will open the discussion by stating the general idea for their side and what are the major points that they will be discussing. Second, we will be hearing the opposition constructive, which will last the same time that the proposition have by stating the general idea for the opposition side and what are the discussants' opinions and arguments about this topic. All discussants must contribute to the online discussion, and after the presentation of arguments, we'll proceed to the part 3. So I think we are all ready for the discussion proper, and to formally start this, I would like to call on Mr. Jose for the proposition constructive.
Thank you, Mr. Magalona. As the moderator of the proposition side about our topic, I'm opening our discussion to discuss our arguments in terms of the legalization of same-sex union and other marital issues here in the Philippines. The main reason behind same-sex union being held back to be legalized in our country, other than homophobic people, would be pointed out to our religion. Since the Philippines mostly consists of Roman Catholic individuals, the values and norms are biased. Thus, same-sex union for some people is considered a sin against God, as stated in the Bible. Religion is said to reinforce one's values, but as it stands in our current society, it forcefully restricts and stereotyping to specific individuals occur. While most are Roman Catholic, there are still within the religion who would like to partake in a union with someone who has the same sexuality, as it is where they believe they would be forever happy with the person they love the most. For decades, the union between man and woman is what's considered normal in our society. Catholicism claims that marriage could only be done by two people of the opposite sex, but that is marriage in the church. Marriage without the acknowledgement of the church is possible through civil marriage, where a government official officiates the matrimony instead of a priest in traditional means. By encouraging civil marriage, these couples can be legally get married as a way to establish their love for one another without confronting religious issues.
Yes, I agree. For me, the world is changing. For some people, they marry because they want to bear a child or to procreate. They tend to think that the purpose of marriage is procreation based on what the Bible says. And because we are in a country that religion circulates our society, we are in a country that is so conservative. We are not that accepting of the concept of marrying with the same sex and divorce or separation. The time changes as we progress to the future of the modern day era, and still, we can't change our perspective about those. As people, we adapt to changes. We adapt to the norms of how society develops. As people, we are accepting of changes. We demand the changes. The world is changing as we know it, and legalizing the same sex union determines our acceptance toward the same sex. Acceptance on how we perceive whom they've chosen to love, acceptance of how they felt about each other and not just tolerating because they are just there. Acceptance that they are valid and they matter. They are people who want to show the love and to tell the world that they are in love. They are people who just want equality without validation from someone, without being scared of people that would look at them as if they've made a crime. Legalizing same-sex marriage would be a big change which will endow the love they deserve and have the equality that they are willing to have. Thank you.
Nation, we should embrace inclusivity. Every member of the LGBTQ+ has the right to acquire freedom, equality, and liberty. The life of others, especially the members of the LGBTQ+, does not depend on someone else. They live on their own. Everyone is unique and we should respect our differences no matter if it is against our own belief and perspective. We should understand their situation. Every member of the LGBTQ plus experiences discrimination in their entire life. Some of them are being judged by society, their friends, and sadly by their own family. They do not harm, and it will not affect the whole country and its people if they will be united to someone with the same gender. Lastly, we should also practice acceptance. The world is dynamic, and every time it revolves, there is a change and innovation. Accept that one nation should value and respect everyone's rights, regardless of their gender, beliefs, perspectives. Everyone in this country deserves to be happy and pursue what they want to, as long as they do not kill, steal, and hurt others by words and by actions. It is almost time that we embrace inclusivity, understanding, and acceptance. Thank you.
If you plan on having or raising children, your status as one or two incredibly influences your rights with respect to your children. In marriage, both accomplices have the same rights and obligations. In a separate, both partners can look for guardianship and appearance rights like every hitched couple. Upon passing, the remaining parent consequently gets to the primary legal parent. Absent marriage, same-sex couple can some of the time turn to selection in a range to pick up the rights of legal parents. While no states may deny appropriation to same-sex couple as long as they get married. LGBT people who take part in pride parades and other celebration are frequently considered to be agent for the whole LGBT community. This makes LGBT individuals appear luxurious and careless, characteristics which are troublesome to join together with a genuine marriage. It must be famous in any case numerous of LGBT people are not energetic to precise their sexuality. They consider it to be a individual issue. Such individuals seem set up a really vigorous marriage and be exceptionally great at child raising. These individuals don't fit a misshaped sea of LGBT individuals and are frequently not considered in talks about. Thank you.
Okay, thank you for the arguments for the proposition side. Now let's proceed with the opposition side. I will start the discussion. Okay. Good day again to everyone. I would like to discuss our arguments as opposition in terms of the legalization of same-sex union in the Philippines. As we all know, the Philippines is made to be known as a Catholic country and the largest Catholic population. If the government will legalize same-sex marriage, it would violate the religious freedom and the long-held morals of the majority. In Leviticus chapter 18, verse 22, it is said that thou shalt not lie with mankind as with womankind. It is an abomination. In Mark chapter 10, verses 6 to 9, it says, but at the beginning of creation, God created, made them male and female. Because of this, a man will leave his father and mother to be united, his wife, and the two flesh will become one flesh. Therefore, what God has joined, let no one separate. As we live in this country where religion became already part of our culture and our lives, with the possible conceptions about marriage, I strongly believe that same-sex union or marriage should not be legalized here in our country. Thank you.
One reason why I think same-sex marriage should not be allowed is because even though they are able to provide the support that a mother and a father can provide, as individuals of the same sex, they might not be able to give the parental guidance that their would-be child needs, especially with regards to the child's sexuality. A research done by Bruce J. Ellis, titled Does Father Absence Place Daughters at Special Risk for Early Sexual Activity and Teenage Pregnancy, states that strong marriage between a man and a woman provides a strong model for their daughters of what to look for in a man. This is something that a couple of the same sex may not be able to give. This would leave the child questioning what should be and what should not be. The child may also encounter an identity crisis, questioning whether he or she should be straight or a part of the LGBTQ community as well. since it is theorized that environmental factors affect a person's sexual orientation. What will make the situation even worse is that same sex couples are biologically incapable of producing an offspring, meaning they would have to adopt or through vitro fertilization. This would add to the child's identity crisis since there will be a time when the child would want to discover who his or her biological parents are. That would be my argument. Thank you very much.
Religious ceremony between two individuals of the same sex or gender. It is conducted for the equality of the LGBT community to be accepted in church marriages and has been endorsed in many countries worldwide. However, while some cultures embrace the notion of the same sex marriage, some people are against it. It is said that most same sex couples have a propensity to adopt a child, which limits the child's right to be raised by both mother and father. It is also possible to create a thought in a child's question, why didn't they have their biological parents or why did they leave them? And that may lead to rebellion and depression. For me, a female child also needs a mother to be able to play her part as a female. And male child needs a father likewise. If not, the child will most likely be confused about their gender and will create a loop with their offsprings. The principle of the couples to sacrifice and to remain married for their children will also be affected by the idea of the same sex marriage because the notion of children not needing both their mother and father will be standardized. Thus, while homosexual marriage is beneficial to many and gives them freedom, many children led by homosexuals will most likely be affected. Briefly, a simple shift would impact the future generation.
Okay, now we're all done providing our arguments as well as our opinions about our topic. Now let's proceed with the evaluation of the current policies and actions done by the government and other non-state actors. The policies or codes were carefully studied and selected by the student leaders prior to this session. I would like to call Ms. Lamigo as she will be discussing the following.
Thank you, Mr. Magalona. So for the first code or the policy is the Family Code of the Philippines, Executive Order Number 209, Sector 1987. Article 1. Marriage is a special contract or permanent union between a man and a woman entered into an accordance with law of the establishment of conjugal and family life. It is the foundation of the family and an inviolable social institution whose nature, consequence, and incident are governed by law and not subject to stipulation, except that marriage settlements may fix the property relations during the marriage within the limit provided by this code. Second is the Civil Code of the Philippines, Article 15. Laws relating to the family rights and duties or to the status, condition, and legal capacity of persons are binding upon citizens of the Philippines even though living abroad. The third one is the SOGI Equality Bill. According to Maria Giandra Deslate, an underbar associate, House Bill number 4982 or an act prohibiting discrimination on the basis of sexual orientation or gender identity or expression, or the SOGI, and providing penalties, therefore, is the first of its kind in the country. Other anti-discrimination bills have been filed in the past, but these were not SOGI specific, lumping the lesbian, gay, transgender, bisexual, and queer sector, or the LGBTQ plus sector, with others such as the differently abled or the indigenous groups. This protects the rights of the LGBTQ plus to avoid any discrimination, yet it is very different when it comes in marriage or union, because this only focuses on having an identity and demand for equality. That's why we call it SOGI. The fourth and last would be the House Bill 6595. This would grant same-sex couples all benefits and protections as are granted to spouses in marriage, including the ability to jointly adopt, inherit property, obtain tax benefits, ensure insurance, health, and pension benefits. The bill was debated by House panel in January 2018 but has not been voted on. Thank you.
Thank you, Ms. Lamigo. And now, after we evaluate and enumerate the important policies that is related with our topic, we will proceed to our next discussion, the synthesis part and suggestions from the discussants. This part will be focused on the possible suggestions that the government or lawmakers might consider as we go along the process of the legalization of same-sex union in the Philippines and as we also address marital issues. Before this session, we have asked our friends and other student leaders from other groups who belong in the LGBTQ plus community. And I selected a few questions that they want to know more and to hear about our opinions about same-sex union. These questions will surely help us formulate or think of other concepts or actions that might consider and become a helpful for those who are watching this. So here are the following questions. In your opinion, are we, the Filipino people, ready for this kind of change? Second one, what can you say about Pope Francis' statement about having support for same-sex union? Number three, we are experiencing discrimination, and I think the legalization of same-sex union is the best way to resolve or minimize the discrimination. What are your thoughts about it? And last, what are your thoughts about the House Bill 6595? Again, this is an open discussion and you can voice out your opinions as long as it is related with our topic. So I would like to start the discussion by answering the first question. For the first question, I think we, the Filipino people, we're not yet ready. The question here is, are we ready to embrace or once this petition is finally approved. We are on much on the traditional side and up to this point I think other factors will still need to be acknowledged like the properties of couples that they have shared and we should give time a sort of protection or rights. According to the Civil Code of the Philippines discussed earlier in Article 15, this law is about family right binding, even though the couple having same sex decided to go abroad and marry there, because some couples do that. Um, they go to other country where same-sex union is legalized. When they go back here, their marriage will be invalid because in the Philippines, there's no such thing as same-sex union. Now, the reason why I've mentioned that Article 15, and the property part, because same-sex couples do that. They go abroad and they invest on something, and they when they return here in legal terms, their marriage will be invalid. And I think it is a very important part as they go along their relationship. There will be times that they are doing things that will secure their both future. So I believe rights in terms of property will become also a factor or needed to be further discussed regarding this topic, not just the actual marriage or union itself. Thank you.
I agree. The society right now is not yet ready, but hearing your points or suggestions about the protection or rights in terms of property of the same-sex couples. In the previous discussion in the Family Code of the Philippines, Article 147, it is stated there that when a man and a woman or capacitated to marry each other, live exclusively with each other as husband and wife without the benefit of marriage or under a void marriage. Their wages and salaries shall be owned by them in equal shares, and the property acquired by both of them through their work or industry shall be governed by the rules on co-ownership. This simply means that there's no yet a concrete law that protects the ownership of same-sex couples because it is for a man and a woman couple only. And I think it is important to have that, especially this kind of matter, since they weren't married still. They're living like a husband or wife, or somehow they feel like a family. If the marriage will be void and all of their investments or the things they've work for will be not considered as conjugal property.
What about advising the same-sex couples to have a last will and testament? I think by having that document for both couples, they can ensure or protect each other's property. Yet this is an alternative because the legalization of the union between the same-sex union is still in the process. For example, the woman wrote something about giving her property to her same-sex partner. Yes, it is possible, but I think we still need to consider the family of the girl. Because according to the law, as long as you have last will and testament, whether you are a couple, as long as your name was stated there and magkakaroon ka ng pamana, therefore you will have it. And it's like that. What I've said, think it's also an alternative way the rights of same-sex couples in terms of ownership. And this topic would be considered by our lawmakers. So definitely agree with you both.
Hello. Even though I'm not in favor of the legalization, I think I still need to voice this out by answering the second question. Pope Francis said this around 2 weeks ago that I know shocked the whole Catholic world regarding same-sex union. Homosexuals have the right to be in a family. What we have to create is a civil union law in that way they are legally covered. This is my opinion or understanding about it. I believe in what our Pope said because I do believe what we are children of God. Hearing this from our Pope, I think it is more on the marriage part yet we still need to consider what is written on the Bible. Thank you.
Yes, I agree, and I believe this is in a different context. What the Pope really meant was not the actual same-sex union, but there should be a civil union law which protects the rights of same-sex couples just like what a normal couple have. I think that other countries did might possibly happen here in our country as long as we study more, be knowledgeable, voice out our concern in a proper way, and we still need time to discuss a lot of things regarding this matter.
Good day. I would like to answer the question number three and share what I was thinking about legalizing same-sex union. Whether you are whether you support the idea of legalization or not, I think we all agree with the rights that everyone should have. I strongly believe that as we accept LGBTQ in our society, we accept their way of showing love. The real challenge in legalizing this law was our tradition because let's accept that and we cannot force someone to change his or her belief, especially those who are in religious sector or side of this issue. It is more on acceptance, knowing that we have a soji bill and we have rights as individuals. What I'm saying is that the suggestions stated by my fellow student leaders, I must say as an advocate, it is very interesting and should put into consideration as well. For now, we have Sojis, and I think it is enough as we are waiting for the process.
Yes, that's right. The Soji Bill protects the rights of the LGBTQ plus to avoid any discrimination. Yet, it is very different when it comes in marriage or union, because this is only focuses on having an identity and demand for equality. That's why we call it Soji. I think by having this bill will surely help our lawmakers to look into this bill and somehow improve it by having additional topic under it. This is a good and legal basis as most of us wanted to legalize same-sex union.
Answering the last question, it is a good initiative made for the LGBTQ+, and we are on the process whether we are in support or not yet support on this matter. Still acceptance and understanding of the people around us, and by having a civil union law dedicated for the same-sex couples with the help of House Bill 6595 will be a huge stepping stone for those who are in favor about the legalization of same-sex marriage or union. So I think we are all both agreeing with one general suggestion about having a civil union for same-sex couples like other countries did since it was endorsed by our Pope Francis at the same time. Other concepts or topics or passing the SOG bill will help us people understanding our fellow Filipinos who are part of the LGBTQ plus community. We want to protect and respect of all people, especially the rights of the same-sex couples here in the Philippines. Thank you.
Yes, I agree with you, Dylan. So I think everyone has their own opinions and suggestions on what might be the improvements that our government should or might consider before legalizing same-sex union here in our country. Since I think personally up to this point, it still needed time and lots of topic to discuss under it. So for the closing part, finally reached the end of our Tambayan session 4, and I'm very glad that we came up with possible suggestions or ideas that should be carried out to finally address this topic, the legalization of same-sex union. And let's do hope for everyone's acceptance. And I think it's time to embrace the change and stop discriminating the LGBTQ plus community and to tell people who still doing that discrimination to stop. In the end, whether you are in favor or not in favor regarding this matter, still what we need right now is acceptance, respect, and that everyone experience the love that each one of us deserve for the rest of our lives. Again, thank you for the moderators, Mr. Lowell Jose, and to his discussants, as well to Mr. Foro and Mr. Garcinas for the opposition side. I hope everyone with us today's session or short discussion will somehow gain more knowledge about this topic and understand each concept under it. Thank you and let's spread love and acceptance. Just don't forget just don't forget to leave us a message and stay safe to all of you. Again, I am Jasper Magalona and see you on Tambayan Session 5.